Hey everyone, I am so happy. As you can see here, I have my dear friend, but he's not here as my friend today. He's here. Well, he is always here as my friend, but he's here to talk about something we never talk about on this relationship or do so as though we're going into battle, which is dating and relationships. And, people are always thinking, mystified, how can Matt Hussey and Dr. Ramani's content have overlap? They have a lot more overlap than you think, because something that I always come back to when we talk about narcissism on this channel is this idea that this is not the end of a story. This is the beginning of a very, very new story as you make sense of it. And what I like to call the informed love story, that what comes out of this is a love story that isn't as impulsive and impetuous, but it's this really layered, but beautiful love story, frankly, it's not often the stuff of our youth, but it's something much more informed. And of course, Matt is the last word in anything to do with relationships. If he had existed when I was younger, this channel wouldn't exist because I would not have gotten into so many toxic relationships. So I guess there was something fortuitous about this. So welcome, Matthew. How are you feeling? I see your beautiful book, and I love how the heart on your microphone is literally like the heart in your chest. How are you feeling?
It's so funny. I hadn't even noticed that. This is literally the first time we've used this thing, so that's so funny. I'm good. I keep reminding myself why I originally wrote this book, and why when I was sat in a room on my own for various different days over 4.5 years, and no one knew I was writing this, why when I was writing it, I felt so connected to how this is going to help people, because this is such a complicated area of so many of our lives, and it doesn't matter what situation you're in. It can be complicated no matter what. If
Mhm.
you deeply want to find love and you're not dating right now, and even if you're not admitting to yourself that you want to find love, it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that the longing for companionship and for connection escapes you. We often try to put it in a box, and we try to push it down, but it doesn't go away so easily. And it's part of us. And I'm kind of fascinated by that in a big way,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
even when we don't want to like actively go out and look for love, we still are in bed at, you know, 10:30 on a Friday evening, laying there, maybe thinking to ourselves, I feel lonely.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that can hit anyone at any age. It is the great leveler in life, no matter
Yeah.
what background you're from, or how much money you have, or what situation you're in, or how much status you have.
Mhm.
It can affect us all, and it can affect us at points in our life where we thought our life would be very different. It can affect us when we come out of a marriage
Mhm.
and we've never realized we would be single again. So those are the people that I'm trying to reach with this book, is people who have complicated emotions around love and wanting to find it, but maybe finding that it's not been as simple as perhaps they'd originally hoped.
Mhm. Mhm. I think that you're saying something that's so, and I didn't mean to go in this direction, but I'm going to go there, is that you're bringing up something that has such interesting resonance in the space I'm in, which is, this longing for, companionship and belonging. And when we think about how people find themselves even in unhealthy relationships, people often feel a lot of shame after they sort of do the postmortem on looking back on, for example, if they dated someone narcissistic or toxic, and they look back and think, what the hell was I thinking? Why did I do those things? And as part of the sort of the trauma informed, betrayal trauma informed work that I do and I talk to groups about, is that part of you that Needs. This isn't even longing, Matt. This is needs. We are a social species. We need relationships. From a psychiatric perspective, a person who doesn't want relationships, that to us is a sign that something is actually not functioning properly for a person, right? So it's not that I'm saying everyone wants a marriage or something like that. It's the need for that want to affiliate is a very healthy human, honestly, species specific need. And it's a safety behavior. It's a safety behavior for us to affiliate. So if in those spaces there was a loss of safety, that's what messes with us so much. So when those spaces break away, whether they are intimate relationships, family relationships, anything, that drive doesn't go away. We sometimes dissociate from it or distance from it, but that driver never goes away. And we can feel really sad when that one thing, that most human of things, to be with another person, or we try to convince ourselves we don't need other people because then we'll be safe, right? I don't need anyone. I can be an island. My friend, Dr. Kate Truitt talks about this a lot, like the trauma response of, I'm an island. I don't need another person. Nobody is an island. When we're doing that, there's a part of us that's terrified. So we want to be with other people. And that's when people turn to you, Matt. And so let's talk about this, though, because I have to say, dating right now, and clients I work with therapeutically, people I talk to in my healing program, dating right now is tough. Can you sort of place us in this sort of time and space of the context of dating now and how that is, how that works for people who are actually trying to find healthy love?
So I think that there's what's going on the outside in the dating culture right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's what's going on for us internally.
Mm-hmm.
And the collision of those two things can be a really potent mix. When our own internal culture of fear and longing and anxiety that this thing that we deeply want may never happen for us
Mm-hmm.
meets an external culture of people taking what they can get while offering the minimum possible investment, or in some cases, intentionally misleading, that can create a recipe for us lowering our standards, giving up on any expectations we once had of what a relationship could look like, and settling for far less than we're worth or we deserve. And in some cases, as you know better than anybody, settling for incredibly abusive and toxic situations. So a huge part of why I wrote this book was because actually when those things happen, when we find ourselves leaving our house and looking for this thing, there are certain instincts that kick in that don't serve us.
Mm-hmm.
And I've played with this over and over again because I called one of the chapters in this book, I called Question Your Instincts. And Audrey, when she first heard that, she hated that chapter name. She was like, you can't write a chapter called Question Your Instincts. Like, our instincts is all we have. And it's really important that we trust our instincts. And I was like, no, I really feel that we have intuition that may be deeper than our instincts. And many of us aren't in touch with that intuition. And that's part of the problem. But our instincts they can be very dangerous. Our instincts are these survival mechanisms that we learned, but they may have been keeping us alive in a context that's no longer relevant in our lives, or they may have been something that we developed at a time when, we were with a very different kind of family unit, a certain parent. This instinct is what we developed to serve us in that paradigm, but now in a different paradigm, it's actually hurting us. And so for example, we date and we may have an instinct that when someone pulls away to try twice as hard.
Yeah.
We may have an instinct that when someone feels scarce, we think they're more valuable, not less. We may have an instinct that says, when I go on a date and I have an amazing time and I have this huge crush, give up everything else that's important in my life right now. Don't go to that yoga class. Don't see my friends. Don't, forget that work project that was important to me for the last 6 months. Just make space in my calendar every day of the week for this brand new person that I don't even know. There are certain instincts that we have that don't necessarily serve us. And so what I encourage people to do is not to distrust all of their instincts, but instead to look at what instincts may not be serving me when I go out there into the dating landscape. Which ones keep hurting me? And I see it all the time. My horror stories that I hear all take place, or many of them take place in the dating phases, where I hear from people who are overvaluing tremendously something that it really is showing itself to have no value whatsoever. I mean, I had a question just recently from someone who said to me, Matt, I had this, what do you do when you have an epic connection with someone on a date and then they ghost you afterwards?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now the truth is, the subtext of that question is that this person and this situation is actually important.
Mm-hmm.
Like the epic connection is reason to keep thinking about this person and to keep kind of wondering what happened and why, instead of looking at the behavior of the fact that this person ghosted you as the most important part. So what I'm trying to do is orient people's focus to get them to decide what's truly valuable to me, and to, in many cases, reassess what we call valuable, what we think is valuable.
It's so funny when you said that, multiple things. I don't know. Are you familiar with the whole literature on scarcity? Like sort of what happens to us when we're under conditions of scarcity? In one of the many iterations of Dr. Ramani, some of the work I've done in the field and continue to care about is around social class and poverty. And there's this really great work that came out of MIT and Princeton on this concept of, because I never thought of it as dating until you were just talking. And you really kind of get at this in your book in a very different way than I'm about to, which is so fascinating to me, is that when we're under conditions of scarcity, our bandwidth depletes and we make short-term decisions. So the best example I can give you is after you go through a whole grocery store and you do a big shop, right? And you have to really make like 100 choices, skim or full fat, bananas or oranges, this beer or that beer, this bread or that bread. So you're making all these choices. Which one's cheaper? So by the time you get to the check stand, that's where all the candy is. And the grocery stores literally put like sort of the impulse purchases at the end of the aisles on the side facing the registers. So now before you know it, there's like Oreos and ice cream and Hershey bars and things you probably shouldn't have in your cart, right? Bandwidth depleted, right? We see this also in terms of, this is why payday loans from the predatory lenders we see out there. That's how people get into those, because as the month goes on and they've been so careful, by the end of the month, that you can't do the so careful anymore and you slip. And maybe you spend $75 out for dinner you shouldn't have spent because you've been so careful all month. And now you're out of money and the rent is due and you do the payday loan and that kind of thing. That's what I mean by the sort of short-sightedness. But what you're talking about in dating here is so interesting to me. That somebody who's withdrawing or withholding, and they're not messaging back, they're not following through. Now you're working under conditions of scarcity. So you make the short-term decision. You have sex with someone really fast. You do something in the relationship you don't want to. You agree to something you don't want to. And now you've almost changed the precedent in the relationship. But I never thought of how it actually hit that sort of behavioral economics literature of scarcity. Those two things have a lot in common. What are your thoughts about that?
That's so fascinating. I hadn't heard that before, and it overlays perfectly onto these dating scenarios. When someone is unavailable, and of course, as you know from your work, for so many people, there's a couple of things going on, right? One is, I think that for all of us, there is a kind of economics, a natural economics in our brain that happens that goes, if they're rare, they must be more valuable.
Correct.
And so And of course, there's a non sequitur. Someone can be hard to get just because they're seeing 10 different people right now. Someone can be hard to get because they are completely emotionally unavailable. Someone can be hard to get because, you know, they have no interest in any of the things that you do. But our brain, unfortunately, treats it like this VIP nightclub that our name isn't on the list for. And we go, you know, the moment you realize there's a list, you're kind of like, oh, there must be something really amazing going on in that room. You don't realize that, no, it's not. It's just overpriced tables and people buying huge bottles of vodka they don't need. There's nothing exciting in that room. But we see a list and we think I need to be on it. So I think that there's a natural economics that plays against us when that happens. I think of it like diamonds and air. You know, we don't think of air as valuable until we don't have it. Right. But, you know, diamonds we think of as rare. So they're the rare thing. Air, of course, is much more valuable. Some people are diamonds. They don't have a lot of real value, but something about them being rare makes the economics of our brain think they're super important. Now, if you combine that with any doubts we have about our own self-worth, that's a really dangerous combination, because now you have a combination that says, if someone is into me, like, this is where I think a lot of people have contempt for the people that are into them, because it's like, if you're into me, there must be something wrong with you. You know, but if you're not into me, you're not texting me back, you're not interested, you're onto something.
Right. Well, so, I mean, yeah. It's a trauma bond talking too, though, right? That idea of having to win someone over, that love is transactional, it's conditional, it's fleeting, it goes away and then it comes back. That's primal. That's some primal stuff.
100%. And so that for so many people that I work with, when their nervous system is getting activated in that way, it makes them feel like this is the real deal. Like, oh, this is it. This is how I'm supposed to feel. And then when someone who actually turns around to meet them comes along, it feels strange. It feels disorienting. It can feel boring to a lot of people. And so all of these things are playing against a lot of people when they're out there dating. And then, of course, come the behaviors, as you said, that we fall into when someone makes themselves scarce, that start to trap us in those dynamics. For example, if someone you'd been talking with regularly every day of the week, you'd been on a couple of great dates with them, suddenly disappears for 2 or 3 weeks, and then reappears one Saturday and says, "What are you up to? How are you?" The instinct normally is gratitude. Oh my God, they're back. Is excitement, elation. It's to think a lot about what to text this person back. And it's also, and this is where questioning your instincts becomes really fascinating to me, because many of us have this idea that having power, because what we want is to also feel like we get our power back somehow. So now they've texted us and we go, how do I have my power in this situation? We go, well, I'm going to feign indifference. So they've texted me and I'm going to be like, oh, I'm okay, just with my friends, like having a good time. What are you up to? And we think that by doing that, by playing cool, chill, indifferent, we're holding on to our power. And the irony of it is we are playing into their hands. Right. Because by not in any way shining a light on the dynamic, we are tacitly approving the dynamic. Right. And we're cementing it, because what this person is learning is, even if you looked at it generously, you could say, well, the one thing this person is learning is that they don't know your intentions at all. If you're not even telegraphing that you're in the market for something real and genuine and quality and serious, because you're not, when you ignore that, you're basically saying, I'm cool with this kind of dynamic. But you're also not calling them out on the behavior. So it goes against our instincts in that moment to be more vulnerable and more human, because it feels like we're giving away our power, but we're not. By saying to someone,
Mm.
hey, I'm a little confused. I felt like we had a good thing, and I was actually kind of excited to see where it was going. And then you disappeared for like 2 weeks. So I'm a little surprised to hear from you. That's a thing that most people don't do, and it's
No.
actually the path to being where you want to be. So that's what I talk about when I talk about retraining certain instincts.
Yeah. Where did that come from, Matt? Because even as you're saying that, that idea of being very, very clear and honest about like, where did you go for 2 weeks? I could imagine any group of people like, no, no, don't do. Where did that idea that that clarity is a bad thing? Do you have any historical context on that? Like, why is that a thing?
Well, I am only posing a theory, but I can imagine that anything from a social perspective that could make us look in any way desperate,
Hmm.
people feel lowers their value. Yeah, I'm telegraphing I don't have value, and in a social context that could harm me. That could suddenly make me look like the desperate one in the equation. So I don't know if that's the case, but that for me, what I know is there's a fear of any time I show my humanity in that way, it's like I'm showing my neck to a predator. It's
Yeah.
like I'm telegraphing some kind of vulnerability. But this is actually where standards become really important. And I think it's where standards get applied to the wrong place. So we think that having a standard is me being indifferent, but
Interesting.
actually the standard is I'm I'm going to be human and I'm going to be vulnerable, but I'm also going to make sure that you're getting the message that this behavior from you is going to get less of my energy, not more.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And that's where the standard comes in, is what's the consequence? So if someone goes, oh, I've got you because clearly you care so much, well, they're going to find out very quickly what it actually means for them that they're trying this hard. And when someone realizes that there's a real world consequences to their inconsistency,
Hmm.
any any misconceptions they had about your value will go out the window real fast, because they'll realize what you're really saying is, I had excitement for where this was going. I thought we were onto a good thing. What I'm really telling you is I've started to change my mind on that. I was I no longer am in that same place.
Hmm.
And those kinds of consequences are what make people realize that, oh, this person really does have standards for themselves and they need to be
Hmm.
taken seriously.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or they don't take you seriously still, and you get out, one of the two.
Right. Or you weed out the suckers. I mean, I think that there's some people who are never going to get you seriously and they're just trolling
Right.
and they've dropped a lot of lines in the water. I mean, it's a tough one. I was talking about with someone recently, and this comes up a lot in dating, is this, I'm using gendered language because this is where it comes up a lot. It's sort of, I'm going to be the cool girl. In fact, our
Hmm.
friend Ellen often uses the term easy breezy. I'm just going to be easy breezy and a cool girl. To me, the
Yeah.
cool girl is a disaster because the cool girl has no needs. The cool girl is just like, yeah, I don't care. Like I'm cool. Like I'm just with my friends, and we have sort of it's almost like the cool girl is wanted as the dream girl. Like we imagine like a group of group of folks. I mean, again, I'm gonna use a heteronormative stance for a minute, but like a group of guys saying like, oh gosh, she's so cool. Like she's just sort of cool with me doing this or that. But it's that again, like you said, is a sense of I'm needy or I'm desperate or I'm this if I ask for or if I need. That cool girl phenomenon is something that is such a real cultural construction, and that many young women and not young women actually aspire to be, as though it's something aspirational to be a needless person.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And you see it everywhere.
Hmm.
But the
Hmm.
tragedy of it is that you actually end up not the a huge part of finding what you're looking for and finding someone who's looking for the same thing is actually telegraphing your intentions. And by the way, for anyone who's wondering, but what does that look like early on? Because you don't want to scare someone away with all this intentionality towards them. It's not towards them. Early on, your intentionality is for yourself.
Right.
So when you say when someone says, there's a woman I write about in the book, a friend of mine, Tanya, who she got to the point where, you know, I knew her 10 years ago, and she was looking for love 10 years ago, and she kept banging her head against the wall out there in dating and feeling like nothing was working. And at a certain point, she just decided, what's the path I want to be on? Like, what do I actually want? Well, I want a relationship. I want to be married. And one day I want a family. And when she went on dates, she started to stop caring about who she was turning away and only started caring about, is my intentionality visible to the person I'm with? And am I paying attention to what they want to? So she would start going on dates. And when they would talk to her about her life, she would start slipping in that intentionality into very casual conversation. She'd say, well, I've been working, you know, she's a very, very successful person in radio. And she would start saying to people, I am been, you know, working really hard for the last 10 years of my life, or the last 15 years of my life. I've come a really long way in my career. And, you know, for a long time, I didn't even think about relationships. And I feel like I'm coming out of that era of my life now. And, you know, I look at life now and I'm like, oh, I'm really excited for a relationship. I'm really excited to be married. Like, those things are things that I get really excited about for myself now in this chapter of my life. She wasn't pointing at him saying, I want this with you. She was just saying it about herself. And she would talk about it the same way a person would talk about being excited about a business idea that they want to start next year. She wouldn't have this in some special thing where she goes, well, you can't talk about that. She just talked about it like, no, this is one of the things in my life that I am excited about. It was all positive. And it had no agenda for him. It was just, this is what I want. And then she would say, how about you? And she would start to have conversations that very quickly revealed whether people were excited about the same things in life. And there's a very, very important chapter in the book called Beware Avoiders that I felt was essential to write, because at the extreme ends, we can spend a lot of time worrying about true liars, you know, real pathological liars. And, you know, I don't need to tell you they're out there. But there are far more avoiders than there are pathological liars. And avoiders are the people that just, they won't have the conversation if you don't. They'll happily date you for 6 months or a year, never talk about what this is, never allude. They'll just dodge the conversation. And an avoider can't thrive unless they're with another avoider. You have to avoid the conversation for an avoider to do what they do. So when someone comes to me and says, Matt, I'm dating this person for the last 6 months, and I'm not sure what we are, my first response is always, well, have you spoke to them? Do you? And they say, well, no. And I'm like, I should be the second person you're having this conversation with. The first person is the person that you've given 6 months of your life to. Are you talking to them about what this is? And this is where we have to go back to ourselves and say, what am I avoiding by avoiding this conversation? There's something right now. I'm enjoying the romance. I'm enjoying the companionship that I'm getting in the short term, but I may be ignoring whether this person has any of the same intentions that I do by not mentioning it. We're scared to ask a question that could yield an answer that we don't want, that could precipitate the end of something we're enjoying.
I absolutely, and I've used that analogy with you about not hitting the 16 and the blackjack hand because that hand's likely to bust. But if the dealer's showing a 10, you're probably going to lose the hand anyhow. So go ahead and take the card. If you bust, you busted honestly, and it's that was going to probably happen anyhow. But it is very, very hard. And the bigger and harder and more difficult piece of this is we don't come into dating and relationships as adults without histories. Like we have histories, and those histories matter. So our instincts are very much, we learned that to be loved, we did have to give up on ourselves. To be loved, we had to become what the other person, we had to become what the parent wanted. We had to worship the parent, whatever it was we needed to do. And that was a survival kind of an instinct. And then that follows us into adulthood. And so this is where, coming back to your point of instincts being tricky, they're very, very tricky. And to your deeper point about intuition, that's where it's bodily held, right? Intuition's where this doesn't feel right. And instincts are actually what often pull us out of that. Like, no, come on. Like, okay, they're ignoring you. Like, this is old home week. Like, let's keep it going. So I do think that that's a big common theme. The one thing that, and I think we've been sort of getting to this is that, can you talk a little bit, and you do get into this in the book too, so give us a little bit so people have to go back and read the rest of it, is what are the challenges that are coming up for folks when, because there's a lot of people out there, Matt. I mean, dating apps wouldn't be a multi-billion-dollar industry if people weren't wanting to even matchmaking is a multi-$100 million industry, right? Probably $1 billion industry in its own right too, right? So lots of people out there trying to find their person, to find love, to create, whatever their love relational story looks like. What are the challenges that you take on in this book and that you've encountered in your work when people really, really want to find love and they're not finding it, and that's just like living in a whole house of pain?
Oh, I had a woman in her perhaps early 60s who, her first question to me when we had a moment together of coaching was not, how do I find love? She said, how do I kill the desire to find love?
That's something. Yeah, there you go.
She said, I have my whole life wanted to find this thing. She said, it's been the most important thing in the world to me. So many other parts of my life are wonderful, but I deeply want this. She even alluded to a marriage she had for a few years, which she said wasn't great, but it even felt like something. It felt like at least she had the thing. And that marriage ended. And she would describe seeing friends, find relationships, and being happy for them, and at the same time being totally envious and finding it incredibly difficult to watch because she just kept seeing over and over again this thing that she wanted so badly that she couldn't seem to get. And she said, I wish them nothing but happiness, but it just brings me pain when I see it because it just reminds me of what I don't have. And she said, I'm worried that if I keep this desire to meet someone, to find my person, and it never happens, I'm going to be sad for the rest of my life. And I don't want to be sad for the rest of my life. I don't want to waste my life on sadness, but that's how it feels. And right now is that I'm in danger of doing that. That is, I don't think that, I still think culturally we don't get real enough about what people are really going through here.
Right.
There's so much, people are shamed for wanting love, for looking for love, as if they're desperate, as if there's something wrong with them. We shame people for not being in relationships, and then we shame them for wanting one. And we tell them, you know, oh, you need to stop being so desperate, or you need to get a life, or you need to find out. And people, and I'm working with people who are like, I have a life, thank you very much. I have an amazing career. I have friends. I have hobbies. I have all of these wonderful things in my life. I'm quite good at being on my own. I do vacations alone. I am all of the things, you know, if they were following Rilke's advice, they're like, yeah, I already checked the box. I'm good at solitude. But I still want to find love, and it hasn't happened. And if people talk about it too much, it's like this great secret that we all have to hold, is that we really want to find love, but we have to pretend like we're fine and we don't really want it that badly. And if it happens, it happens. So that is a kind of chronic pain that more people than are admitting are living with. And it appears differently at different stages of life. For the 30-something who really wants a family, there is a truly anxious and in some cases very panicked component to that pain of, oh my God, I have my whole life wanted to have a family, and I still haven't met someone yet, let alone got to the point of having a family with them. That causes massive distress for people. And when people are in that level of stress, they make decisions that can compound the amount of pain in their life by partnering with the wrong person. In some cases, having children with someone that now is a part of their life that is truly toxic or abusive. And so all of that happens. Then you've got the people who are past that phase of their life, and there's the chronic pain of the person I just spoke about, who wants companionship and is feeling like, God, in these years of my life, I'm still not where I want to be, and I feel like I'm in danger of wasting my life on this pain. So a kind of unexpected component of this book is almost a pain management component of how do you take what is a very real and very human sadness that many of us feel, that there's nothing wrong with. There is nothing wrong with you. Dating is hard. Finding your person is hard. Don't let anyone tell you that it's easy. And if it was easy for them, then great for them. For many, many people, it is not easy. It is incredibly hard to find a roommate for life. The second thing is dating itself. The culture is really hard right now. So don't be ashamed if you're finding it hard out there in the culture. And third, the feelings you're having about being sad are incredibly normal and human. There is no shame in those feelings either. But what we can say is there's a pain I'm feeling, and then there's my relationship with that pain. And that woman, I said to her, when you feel that pang of sadness or of loneliness, there is a physical component to that. That's real. And in that moment, when you're laying in bed and you're feeling that, I want you to treat yourself as someone who deserves immense amounts of kindness right now. Because if you remove all of your story from it and all of the things you're telling yourself, because there's a lot of stories she was attaching to it. I've failed myself. I've messed up my life. I screwed it all up. I left it too late. No one wants me. I'm not attractive. It's never going to happen for me. I'm going to die alone. There's all this story that goes with it. But at its essence, what it was a person laying in bed feeling lonely. And if we can just go back to that, we go, oh, there's a human here in my custody that I have to take care of right now because he or she is feeling loneliness. But the story that goes with it, that's where we compound our pain in unnecessary ways. If we can start to bring a different approach to our love life, a fresh approach, we can start to integrate into our lives behaviors and a kind of a way of living that invites in opportunity over time without in any way diminishing our present day experience by living in hope of something happening. And that's my aim, is to get people to that place where you're open again, to you at the beginning of this conversation, Ramani, you said something so important. You said, like, there are all these new stories that we can live. There's the story that we of our past, or of that person that we were married to for 20 years and we wish we'd left sooner, or that's a story. But there are many more stories available for the telling, whose beginnings can be located precisely where your feet are now. And to me, the trick is if we can create a life that is open to those stories, while also allowing us to be happy enough with our lives as they are today, that paradoxically, if it stayed this way, I'd actually be okay.
Yeah. It's a lot. Like that pain of not finding it, and the sort of this emotional callousing people can create, like, so much else is working in my life. Maybe I don't get all the pieces, even though I'm sad about not getting this piece. It's really, really, really complicated conversation for folks. And I think that it's allowing the feelings. I mean, the feelings are going to come, they're going to go through, they're going to pass. But I don't think that there's an easy answer to this either. And one thing you and I were certainly talking about earlier, even before we came on the call, is this idea of, as people get older, and it's something that I know when, especially if a person's gone through, let's say they've gone through a long-term marriage and they're married to somebody narcissistic, antagonistic, they went through the whole toxic divorce and all the difficulties around that. It can sour a person on love and relationships, but that desire to be in something that's healthy almost feels out of reach. But as people get older, they'll recognize companionship has so many benefits, in the sense of, it's just someone who's there. You're not as scattered as you get older, in terms of running around after kids and as aspirational in a career. You might still be aspirational, but it doesn't have the same kind of a vibe. And as I was telling you, it's an interesting cultural conversation with the whole Golden Bachelor thing, right? That even that was its own cultural moment, of having a man in his 70s choose amongst women who were in their mid to late 50s, into, I think, some probably at around 72, and making, and seeing it from the story of, is it not the same story for the younger folks on The Bachelor? But then when the relationship ended, it begged this bigger conversation of, what are the kinds of choices people make as they get older when it comes to companionship? What are the priorities? How do we make decisions about relationships? It shifts a lot, but once you've been through that part of the process, for example, something very toxic, it's easy to believe it's not going to happen, or it's never taken. I mean, Matt, I've worked with many clients who had relationships that lasted like 5 or 6 years, got close to to a permanent partnership, fell apart. Couple years break, 5 to 6 years, fell apart. Now, so that you're talking now, if that happens 2 or 3 times, we're not talking about 20 years. 20 years in and out of relationships. Now a person is in their 40s, and so or 50s. There's grief. I mean, that's the only that seems to be the sort of the overwhelming emotion at that point. And again, it's not easy.
It's I love having these conversations, because this is almost where I want to sit the most with people, is in that, what you just described, that 20 years of getting close and nothing, getting close and nothing, that is so real. And
yeah,
I speak in the book about my own journey with chronic physical pain, and how for 7 or 8 years of my life, it just ruined my life for a long time. I mean, I wasn't present in my life. I had, you and I have spoken about this, but I developed tinnitus in my ears that was just a loud ringing that never went away. And then it was accompanied by, on top of that, a throbbing in my ear and my head that just 24/7, I would feel it. And I flew around the world and spent an ungodly amount of money trying to fix it and trying to get better and trying to figure it out, and got sent to every kind of doctor and trainer and this and that, and it just never got better. And it got to the point where I realized, oh, I don't know what to do anymore. I keep every time I had a doctor's visit coming up and it was a different kind of doctor than one I'd seen before, I suddenly felt a little bit better because I got hopeful again that maybe this was going to be the thing that fixed it. And it was almost like the same way people go to a date and they have a great date, or they have a date that suddenly holds the promise that this pain that they have, this chronic pain that they have, is about to end. And when that doctor's visit didn't work, when they told me there's nothing they could do, or when we tried something and it made no difference, I would plunge into a whole new state of depression because I just reached complete hopelessness with it. And I felt like I had to kill hope because everyone kept telling me to like keep hoping that, don't ever give up because it's gonna. And after 7 years, I was like, I have flown around the world trying to fix this. The hope is the worst thing about this. This is the part that's hurting me the most. So I have to kill that hope. And for me, what helped was getting to a place of happy enough, not happy, but happy enough, because when I could just get to happy enough using certain tools that I talk about in the book, from that place I started to go, you know what? I've found enough happy with this physical pain that if it never goes away, I actually can still count myself as someone lucky in life who's got to live and got to experience life and got to make the best of it. And I can do this. I can be happy enough here. Would I be happier if my pain went away? Right. Probably, but I can be happy enough where I stand right now. And I think that in a way is the paradox of how we can start to find some peace in our lives as a single person who wants to find love, is that if we can get to a place of happy enough with our lives as they are right now, happy enough, I find, is the springboard for everything else. Because when you're happy enough, if you stay curious, curiosity can lead you to some interesting places. It can make you start to pay attention to behaviors that you wouldn't have seen before, or types of people that wouldn't have been on your radar before, or even in yourself, ways of showing up that are new for you, that can lead to a whole different reality. And this has become my fascination, Ramani, is just this this idea that our reality is our reality, and we can do something slightly different. We can become a social experimenter in our life who tries a different way of being, a different way of showing up with people, a different way of relating to people. And we're just kind of, in a way, we're shooting in the dark because we don't know what the right thing to do is. It may never have been modeled for us. We just don't know. But there's something about just doing something slightly to the left of what you normally do that I have found to be one of the most rewarding experiences in life, because it gets you a slightly different result. And the slightly different result can be a really mind-blowing moment, because if nothing else, what it tells us is what I've been experiencing so far in my life, or the way I've told myself life is not, it doesn't reflect all of the different lives or ways of living that are available to me. It reflects the groove that I've worn in my life that has, through my experiences and everything I've been through, has started to feel like that's just what life is like. And I try to, like Ramani, when we've got mutual friends, one of our mutual friends is Lewis Howes. I know for me, I struggled with trust a lot. And
Mhm.
I started to look around at people around me who were more open than I was in the way that they gave to other people.
Mhm.
And I've always been a giver at heart, but I get afraid to give because I'm afraid like it's good, I'm going to get taken advantage of.
Right.
So
Right.
I started to look to people like Lewis and go, Lewis was he was like naturally, he was much better at it. And I saw that I really admired the friendships he'd made and the way that he was relating to people in the world. It just felt
Mhm.
like a better way of being. And I was like, I want my life to be more like that. But what's he doing differently? And I would sit with him and I would just ask him. He must have thought I was crazy, but I would sit with him and ask really, really naive and stupid questions. That would to me were true conundrums. I'd go, but wait, Lewis, what do you do when when you're going to do that for someone? Do you not worry that if you do that and then they take advantage of you, that it's going to feel really bad and it's going to, and he would say to me, well, if that happened, then I would just note who that person is and I would give less next time and I'd readjust how much I give them. And then I'd give more to, I'd
Mhm.
reallocate my energy to someone else. And I go, but that wouldn't make you not want to do it again. And he'd say, no, I would just realize that with that person,
Yeah.
I can't keep giving to that person. I would start to get really comfortable behaving like treating myself like a toddler learning to walk
Yeah.
an area that someone else was an athlete.
Mhm.
And not hating on myself for that. There's areas where I'm an athlete where
Sure.
Lewis is a toddler.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
but but in those areas, if you can learn how to walk,
Yeah.
even at the age of 60 or 70 years old or 80 years old, and you've never done it before, you've never walked in that area before because of the life you've had.
Yeah.
If you can start learning how to walk in some of those areas, I may never be like Lewis in every way because I'm not Lewis and he hasn't got my experiences and I haven't got his. But if I can start to get 10% of what he has in that area, it can change the trajectory of my whole life. And
Yeah.
for people in
Yeah.
their love lives, that
Mhm.
10% can be the difference between finding the love that you're looking for and continuing to run into the same experiences or continuing to feel invisible.
Yeah, no, it is again that, but I mean, and that's growth, right? That it's that those social, as you're calling them, experiments we do within ourselves that even I'll tell clients, you don't have to commit to this, but let's just try something new for a minute and just see how it feels. Try it on. It may not feel authentic. It may not feel real. It may be, again, somebody's own history with betrayal of trust. Maybe there is a cautiousness there. And listen, some wounds don't ever fully evaporate, right? There's going to be things that are ours. And I think that there's a point at which that you embrace that part of yours and yourself instead of saying, I want to be not this person. I'm like, well, I mean, that the part of that is partly you. And sort of instead of always pathologizing a part of yourself, also integrating that part of yourself so you can feel like it's, I mean, some people are a little slow to warm up, but then it's okay. Like be slow to warm up. It's like a very intricately wrapped package. You get to cut through all the tape. I'm like, oh, look at that. There's something in there. A lot of the healing from narcissistic relationships is around discernment, giving like this exactly what Lewis was suggesting is this idea of I'm gonna go out there and I'm going to engage with trust. If you betray my trust, I've now learned something about you. I'm not going to blame myself, but rather I'm not probably not going to engage with you exactly the same way in the future. Not necessarily saying also going to kick them to the curb. I'm just going to be a bit more discerning. And I think that giving ourselves permission for discernment, as I put it, is very much in line with a lot of what you're talking about in terms of standards. It's a constant calibration in human relationships, and that even as we go on in life, we think we know a person and we learn a little bit more about them, and we're like, ooh, and then we might sort of readjust a little bit. And I think that those constant adjustments that are part of human relationships are also part of all of this sort of growth that we go through.
And it happened, I've watched it happen at every single age. One of the most inspiring things in my life right now is my mum. I
Yeah, I agree.
I am watching my mum in real time make new connections about what she's capable of, about what she's allowed to say no to,
Hmm.
about what is okay to have a boundary about. And like you say, it's not that she doesn't get activated by when
Sure.
someone's mad at her over it, or when someone says that she's now being cold or mean because she's not doing accepting the thing that she used to accept that wasn't good in the first place. It affects her, but then deep down she also hears there's a new voice that says, no, but you know what, I don't want to put up with that anymore, and I'm not okay with that anymore. And I see these steps that she's taking that I Roman, it's been I I sometimes everything that I do, and I assume it is the same for you, everything that I do is predicated on the idea that someone can change. Because otherwise, why bother? Why,
Well, I'm
there's no.
halfway there. I don't think the narcissistic people could change.
Well,
So I
I
think,
and
right?
yeah, and I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. I think there's certain kinds of people that it's to assume they're going to change
Right.
is the worst possible idea in the world. Um, but when it comes to ourselves, I have to believe people can change. Otherwise, I just wouldn't do this. It
Sure.
wouldn't be no merit in doing it.
Right.
But when I see people at every age making changes, it's still to this day, it still feels it still gives me this feeling of, oh yeah, people do change. It's not, sometimes if you see, even with ourselves, I think like, so there's certain parts of me that I go, God, I've tried so many times to improve this part of me, and it's been really, really hard to even move an
Mhm.
inch over 15 years in that department.
Yeah.
Um, and yet I see those inches being fought for and won by people. And well, I think one of the most encouraging things is you don't need to change by 50% to get a
No.
different life for
Mhm.
yourself. You only need to move an inch in many
Yeah.
cases to put yourself on a very different trajectory than the one you've been in so
Mhm.
far. So I find that wildly encouraging.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that for me, it's even, I don't even think of it about the capacity to change, but the capacity to heal.
Mm,
Right? Healing is by definition change, but it's change in the direction of growth, in the direction of becoming healthier. And that's change, right? And so I fully believe in people's capacity to heal. I see it every single day. And so I know what's possible, but it does require seeing things more clearly. You can only heal in a context, right? So if a person kept, I don't know, they had a wound and the wound wasn't being kept dry, the wound isn't going to heal properly, right?
mm,
For human beings, that context is having, understanding, for example, if you're in invalidating relationships, that this is not good for you, and that we have to teach you things like, how narcissism works, or how radical acceptance works, or giving yourself the opportunity to grieve and all of that. So I think those are to me, it's like healing. And I feel like my role is to create the context in which people can heal, because at
mm.
that point it does become there's a certain amount of personal, like there's a personal pacing at that point. But if you don't have the right conditions, it's very, very difficult. And I think that's what so much of this work is giving yourself permission to find those conditions, to create those conditions so that the wounds can heal.
It's why I love what you say about taking space after a narcissistic
Yeah,
relationship,
yeah.
because it's, when we've been wired a certain way for so long and wired to react to certain things for
Mhm.
so long, um, I it's hard. I come across a lot of people who I coach who, um, it's hard for them to recognize the right thing right now
Right.
because they're still detoxing from the wrong thing. And I liken it to, if you take a drug addict and the day they go cold turkey, you ask them to appreciate a sunset. It it's probably not the day that they're going to appreciate the beauty of a sunset. You know,
No.
the you're coming down from the highs and the lows and all of that, you know, artificial stimulation, and a sunset can be one of the most beautiful things in the world, but you have to be in the right place to be
Right.
able to actually
Right.
appreciate it. So I love what you say about
Mm.
giving yourself time, because I
Mhm.
think that ability to your nervous system to calm down and to
Mhm.
make new connections actually makes space to appreciate a new kind of energy in your
Absolutely.
life.
So today is the day. I am so happy. The book comes out into the world today. I feel like you're putting a little baby out into the world. So I am so happy for you and everybody. This is launch day. It's get out there, get to the bookstores, get to wherever you buy your books, get this book because you can get it into your hands today. So Matt, do you have any parting words for us? And just tie this wisdom together for us that's in the book, and then also tell us where we can find out more, because I know you're doing so much cool stuff related to the release of your book. So can you tell us all of that?
Well, I suppose I would leave people with just a thought. There's a moment in the book where that whenever I read I remember reading J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan, actually reading the book and feeling there were so many adult moments in that book and so many moments of raw emotion. And there's a moment where Peter is laying on a rock and the tide is rising and he thinks he's going to die. And,
Hmm.
you know, it starts by him feeling fear, which isn't a common emotion that he feels. He suddenly feels afraid. And then all of a sudden, Barry writes, he's standing upright on the rock with his heart beating a new message to him, which is to die will be an awfully big adventure. And I get goosebumps as I say that, because the moments in my life that have felt like a death, those have been those have been the beginning of some really amazing adventures. And those have, you know, those your next adventure is waiting for you at whatever age, at whatever stage of your life you're at right now. We're going to experience many deaths in our life. Um, an ego death, a divorce, you know, the death of a promise, the death of a dream, the death of a idea of what we thought our life would be, the death of a structure that we thought we'd have a family in, but didn't happen for us. There are going to be so many of these deaths in our lives. But, you know, there's always that moment where you realize, oh, this is the beginning of another adventure. You know, I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, and you know, when
Me too.
Gandalf, you know, is dragged by the Balrog down into the mines of Moria, we think Gandalf is dead, and in a way he is. You know, Gandalf the Grey is no more, but back comes Gandalf the White, a
Mhm.
more powerful version, and we get to have that rebirth in ourselves. So my message to everyone out there is that your next adventure awaits. You have so much magic to go and give and create in your life, whether it leads to the exact kind of love you always thought you wanted or something even more interesting, who knows? But your magic is there and it is waiting to be unleashed again. Um, and it can be unleashed again. Remember, even when you have a breakup or you leave a marriage, remember that so much of the magic you think you're missing is you.
Mhm.
It's what you brought to that relationship. It's the way you showed up that made that relationship special in so
Mhm.
many ways.
Right.
And you took you with you in the deal.
Mhm.
So you still have you. You still have the magic. Now it's about unleashing it in a new direction
Mhm.
in whatever modest and beautiful way you can. For anyone who wants a copy of the book, it really is designed to be a co-pilot, not just for anyone who's looking for love, but for anyone who's looking to weather a really difficult storm in their life, for anyone who is trying to come out of healing from the loss of past love, or just dealing and managing better the emotions, the complicated emotions that come with being single.
Mhm.
It's called Love Life, How to Raise Your Standards, Find Your Person, and Live Happily No Matter What. You can get a copy at lovelifebook.com. We're doing some amazing giveaways right now for anyone who does get a copy of the book. We're giving away tickets to my retreat this year in October, which I'm so, so excited, or in September, I should say. We're giving away tickets to my 6-day event. We're giving away signed books, sweatshirts, t-shirts, one-on-one with me, all sorts of wonderful things if you register your purchase at lovelifebook.com. And we also are doing an event, a virtual event on May the 4th called Find Your Person, which is really for anyone who wants to take the principles from the book and apply them practically this year to make progress in their love lives. So all of that, both the ability to grab a copy of the book and to register your purchase for all of those amazing goodies, that's all on lovelifebook.com. And I just want to thank you, Ramani, for having me, because our friendship means the world to me. And nothing brings me more joy. I know we did something on Instagram recently. The joy that I feel when people write in the comments like, oh, I just love the relationship between the two of you and I love seeing you together. I get profound joy from that, because it means people are feeling what I'm feeling when I talk to you.
No, I appreciate that so much. I am so happy for you. So everybody, this is his big day. As somebody who's just gone through her big day, it's a funny day. It's a complicated day, but it's a really important day. And so I am so proud of you. And again, to get people, I think the more people, I always say, the more people out there that are happy in love, the fewer bad drivers will be on the freeway at a minimum. So you gotta have that part. And I think leaving us with the Lord of the Rings piece too. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan too. And I think the one thing we want to remember about healing happens really kind of at the end of the story when Frodo doesn't go back to the Shire. Frodo kind of goes off. He goes off with the elves. And to me, that actually captures the survivorship of many people who've been through tough relationships. Once you've been through that, you often don't go back to the life you had once had. You have a wisdom, you have a knowing in you. You don't go back home again. The home you go forward into, is this ridiculously strong new version of you. It doesn't mean you leave everyone behind, but the world you enter into is so different. And you see the world through different eyes. It is Frodo going off with the elves. He goes on another very different adventure, but what he doesn't do is go back to life the way it was. So I think that I feel like I passed my book to you to go and take people on the rest of that adventure. I love you dearly, Matt. I wish you nothing but success and happiness as this launch happens.
I love you too, friend. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.